Imagine you are living in Missouri in 1860. The Civil War is over, but instead of peace, you get chaos, ruin, and the crushing feeling that history has left you behind. Out of this boiling pot of despair emerged a legendary outlaw, a man they would later call a Robin Hood with a revolver. Jesse James did not just shoot bankers. He turned his robberies into a political performance that made the federal government sweat. A former Confederate guerrilla, he refused to lay down his guns when everyone else accepted defeat. While northern industrialists were buying up land, Jesse and his brother Frank decided their personal contribution to the economy would be robbing railroad companies blind. In the eyes of ordinary Southerners, he was no longer just a criminal. He became an avenger, a symbol of resistance, a man single-handedly challenging the system that had crushed their way of life. Newspapers wrote about him obsessively, turning every train heist into an epic saga of David versus Goliath. The locals did not see a thief. They saw a Robin Hood who only robbed the rich, even though, in reality, the lion's share of the loot stayed right in his gang's pockets. 95. It was the perfect PR campaign, built entirely on hatred for the victors. Jesse understood something crucial. To become an icon, you did not just need to shoot straight, you needed to play on the emotions of the crowd. When he stormed into a train car, the passengers did not see a threat. They saw the embodiment of protest. While the government branded him a terrorist, farmers whispered about his nobility, crediting him with heroic deeds he never actually did. He became the criminal world's first true superstar, his fame spreading faster than the bullets from his Colts. But here is the strange part. Why were the very people he robbed willing to hide him in their barns? The answer lies in the psychology of the defeated. When everything has been taken from you, you start to worship anyone who will even just spit in the face of the conquerors. Jesse gave them the illusion of revenge, turning ordinary street crime into an act of civil disobedience. He knew the power of an image. The cold stare, the flawless suit, the willingness to put a bullet in anyone who stood in his way. This guy turned robbery into the art of survival. He proved that you do not need good deeds to become an idol. You just need to be the loudest enemy of the people everyone else hates. His life became an endless chase. Every new train was just another stage for a play where the audience already knew the ending, but still held their breath waiting for the next act. But behind the facade of a folk hero was a calculating mind. He knew that in a world where justice is bought and sold, the only way to stay afloat is to become the law yourself. He woke up every morning knowing there was a price on his head, but that only added a thrill to his game. He was the perfect product of his era, a man who managed to turn his own downfall into a literal cult of personality, forcing an entire country to argue over who he really was. Villain? Or the last knight of the dying South? So what exactly made him choose a path that inevitably led to a bullet in the back of the head from his own accomplice? Picture a startup where instead of PowerPoint presentations, you have .45 caliber Colts. And instead of venture capital, you have the contents of regional bank safes. 95. Jesse James and the younger gang turned robbery into a well-oiled machine, running with the precision of a Swiss watch. They were not just taking money, they were building a brand. Every heist came with theatrical gestures that transformed common thugs into folk heroes in the eyes of ruined farmers. People did not see bandits. They saw avengers fighting for the lost honor of the post-war South. The marketing worked flawlessly. The press ran headlines that turned police reports into adventure novels, making the lawmen look like a bunch of helpless extras always showing up late to the finale of a great show. But behind this successful facade was the psychology of total paranoia. When your income depends on perfect timing and your life depends on leaving no witnesses, every person you meet starts to look like a Pinkerton hitman. Jesse stopped sleeping peacefully. His home became a fortress where the slightest creak of a floorboard triggered a reflex reach for his holster. He took suspicion to the absolute extreme. He checked every horse for signs of being followed and overanalyzed the tone of voice of even his closest allies. This was a business where a single failure cost you your head, and success only fueled the interest of bounty hunters. And this is where the story gets darker. The strangest part is this leader's irrational attachment to the very people breathing down his neck. Jesse started keeping rookies close. guys whose eyes showed a thirst for cash, not loyalty to the cause. It was as if he needed that dangerous proximity just to feel the rush of adrenaline. Without it, his existence lost all meaning. Why would a man who built his career on mistrust voluntarily let people who clearly had an axe to grind into his inner circle? Maybe it was the unbearable boredom of winning. When you have become a legend, the only worthy opponent left is your own death, disguised as a friendly handshake or a politely offered breakfast. He turned into a cornered animal who had set traps all around his own sanctuary. Every new day brought a chilling realization. The noose was tightening, and friends were turning into potential traitors, calculating the bounty on his head. Jesse knew the end was near, but instead of running, he just tightened the noose around his own neck, waiting to see which of his trusted men would be the first to take the fatal shot. It was a game of Russian roulette where the cylinder was fully loaded and the trigger was being pulled by the man he once trusted to watch his back. In the calm before this storm hid the most important question of all. How much does loyalty cost when betrayal pays a fortune? And what is it like knowing that every one of your allies is already mentally spending your money while you share your last piece of bread with them? April 3rd, 1882, in St. Joseph began with a suspiciously clear sky. Jesse James, the man whose face had become the ultimate icon of the American frontier, woke up in his house on Franklin Street. A strange silence hung in the air, broken only by the steady ticking of a clock. On this particular Monday, the legend decided to be just an ordinary man. He took off his heavy revolvers, the daily accessory he never left behind, not even to go to the outhouse, and carefully placed them on a shelf. It would have been just a normal morning. 95. If it were not for the dust that had treacherously settled on the frame of a picture called Domestic Life. Jesse walked over to the wall. He took off his coat, left wearing only his shirt. He stepped up onto a chair to dust off the canvas, which was hanging just slightly crooked. At that exact moment, Robert and Charlie Ford were standing right behind him. Two brothers he had taken under his wing were now staring at an unprotected target. Robert, young and ambitious, could already feel the heavy weight of the reward money in his pocket. His hand slowly reached for his holster. Only one thought was racing through his mind. Exactly how many pieces of silver is the life of a man who, just yesterday, seemed like an untouchable god? Think about the sheer absurdity of it. The greatest outlaw of the century, a man who had baffled the best detective agencies in the world, is about to die because of his love for tidiness. If he had just ignored that damn dust, if he had not decided to tidy up his house at that very second, history might have taken a completely different turn. He turned his back on the men who had already sold his soul for a stack of cash. Robert Ford cocked the hammer. The metallic click was the final chord in the symphony of fear Jesse had been conducting for years. The bullet entered right in the back of his head. Instant darkness swallowed the man who was used to looking death straight in the eye. A sudden emptiness took over the house. The Fords just stood there, staring at the lifeless body. And in that moment, they probably realized that by taking their idol's life, they had also killed their own reputations, cementing themselves as the ultimate symbol of cowardice for centuries to come. History does not forgive betrayal, especially when it is done for comfort and a quick payday. Jesse James was gone. He left behind a legend, but also a brutal lesson. Even the most dangerous predator becomes defenseless the second he decides it is time to rest. 2 inches of distance between the barrel and the target decided everything. The irony of fate was ruthless. A man who always kept his finger on the pulse of danger was ultimately taken down by a simple household chore. To this day, the audience of this drama still wonders, was it just a fatal accident, or the inevitable end for a man who had been playing tag with death for far too long? That gunshot in St. Joseph put a hard stop to the Outlaw's biography, but it opened up a portal to hell for his killer. Robert Ford expected a triumphant return as a hero who had cleansed the state of a terrorist. But reality turned out to be much uglier. Instead of laurels and handshakes, the press branded him a dirty coward. And the public, who just yesterday had prayed for Jesse's capture, now saw Robert as the embodiment of everything they despised. The world is a paradox. The crowd loves outlaws, but they absolutely despise anyone who kills their idol, not in a fair duel, but cheaply, right in the back. Ford became an outcast. His name literally turned into a curse word. He tried to capitalize on his infamy, touring cities with stage plays where he reenacted the murder scene himself. It was the first time in history that posthumous marketing was taken to such a grotesque level. Audiences paid good money just to stare at a traitor, only to shower the stage with insults by the end of the show. Robert was trapped. 95. He killed the legend, but he could never replace it. He was forced to forever carry the shadow of the man whose skull he had shattered. His life turned into an endless run from public disgust, which turned out to be way more terrifying than being chased by Pinkerton agents. Jesse, on the other hand, achieved almost saint-like status in death. He was idealized, transformed into a romantic symbol of the fight against progress, while Ford wandered through dusty saloons trying to prove he mattered. The dead man's name was becoming a massive brand. James's posthumous fame grew in direct proportion to the hatred for his executioner. People are willing to forgive robbery, blood, and violence as long as it is wrapped in the beautiful packaging of a protest. But betrayal breaks an unspoken social contract, one that relies entirely on the illusion of honor among thieves. Robert Ford eventually met his own end in Colorado, gunned down by a man who was just looking for some cheap fame of his own. The irony peaked right there. The legend killer was killed for the exact same reason he had once pulled the trigger. The world does not tolerate a vacuum, especially when it comes to cult figures. History proved that fame is a currency, and it depreciates instantly if all you hold in your hands is someone else's blood, rather than your own ideas. Just become nothing more than footnotes in textbooks, while great criminals become myths that feed the imagination of entire generations. Jesse James won, even from 6 feet under. He remained a symbol. And Robert Ford became nothing but a grim reminder that a lack of honor always forces you to pay the full price in the end.